I empathize when the fans talk about load management and all that stuff. Because I
Yes.
remember
Interesting.
for my dad, I grew up, both my dad and mom are state employees. And so him taking me to a game once a year was a big deal. Spent a lot of money on it. And I could imagine, again, for like a government employee, like spending $80 to $100 like for those tickets. It's a lot of money, and it's a bummer. I remember we went to try to go see like Vince Carter. Vince was sitting, and it was like, oh damn, and you're just like, this is a bummer.
I'm very empathetic to that. I am, and I understand that gripe that fans would have when a player sits out. And like, I have respect for the OGs like Jordan. It's like, this might be the one, I think he said like, this might be the one chance that a guy, some 11-year-old kid gets to come and watch me play.
Right.
And he played. Guy, unless he was like significantly hurt, it's that the player side of it, that's not always on the players. I think we've said this before on the pod. It's not always on the players that are saying, I'm going to sit out tonight. I need a night off. A lot of times there's a performance team, and they have all these different metrics measuring you on a weekly basis, and they call it running hot. And they will like legitimately give you a heads up and be like, hey, all your data says you're running hot. You may have to sit out next week. Which game looks better for you? You want to sit out Tuesday? Well, Tuesday I'm playing in Brooklyn. My family lives in Brooklyn. So no, I want to play in Brooklyn. All right. Do you want to sit out Wednesday, the second night of a back-to-back? That maybe makes more sense. Okay, I'll do that.
What do you think the players owe the fans? What do you think? And I'm saying this as a performer, my industry's a little bit different. What do they owe? I've heard the version of, we owe you nothing. Like, if you don't like it, don't come to the games, don't watch.
A basic level of just professionalism. And professionalism to me means you're working at your craft, you're trying to get better, you're trying to win, you're trying to play hard, you're trying to be a good teammate. You acknowledge the fans. Like that's just basic professionalism. We talked about this before we went on. I think most guys get that.
Yeah.
I think in your industry, specifically with like stand-up or a Broadway show, right? You said there's no middleman, right?
Yeah, so
in the NBA, like
I owe the fans everything.
I think a lot of players feel like they owe something to their teammates or maybe the owner or the coach, and it's like, I get to perform in front of the fans, but I think there's like some sort of disconnect with athletes there.
Yeah,
and it's not intentional. It's not malicious. It's not malicious. And I don't think who said that we don't owe the fans anything.
I've just heard a version of that, of just like, I call these like the Draymond Green haikus, just in somewhere in his catalog of podcasts. And there's a little bit of like, you're right. Like, fine, if we're going to be really black and white, nobody owes anybody anything. Fine, if we're going to be like really blunt and harsh about it. But I remember I grew up loving the sport, and I remember like age 8 going to that first game, 10, 12, 14, 15. I don't think people realize how much of like Peja just turning and going like this to a bunch of, prepubescent Indian kids, what that meant to me and my friends. It really meant a lot. The rule for me is, as long as like my wife's not there, my kids aren't there, if you ask and you want to say hi, I'll say hi, always. To me, I just feel like I owe you that, because I'll never forget this, man. Like that window while people care is pretty small. It's going to go to who are you pretty quick. And I've seen that in show business. I've seen the ebbs and flows of my career.
If you're a jerk. They'll remember. If you
but
blow
like
someone off, they will.
Yeah, what those moments that Peja, Mike Bibby, White Chocolate gave the city of Sacramento, us kids, like, and they really like showed love to the city when the national narrative was Sacramento as a whole, it means a lot. So even when I see Bobby Jackson now at Arden Fair Mall, I'm like, Bobby freaking Jackson. To me, that's maybe my take on it is a little bit different, of like, hey man, as long as they're being respectful and exhibiting some decorum, and you're not in dad mode or in husband mode, I think to be gracious in that moment is something that we've lost a little bit.
Yeah. I'm going to acknowledge, like, we wouldn't have the NBA without fans, right? How do you think we have revenue? It's like, because people watch and people come to the games. Why do we have a jersey patch now? Because games everywhere, all over the world, and people watch. There are fans. To your point about,
but decorum and respect goes two ways. So I agree that some of the comments.
To your point, I wasn't going to say that. To your point about interaction, between self and fans, I had a really weird stretch, like partially because of what happened at Duke, where very early in my NBA career, like if you came at me sideways or you came at me when I was at dinner,
hair, JJ. I remember spiky hair, Orlando.
Frat guy,
JJ.
JJ.
Dude, LA looks gel. You were angry.
I would be a jerk. I would be a jerk to people.
You were really. By the way, I was just gonna give you a compliment. You were really jacked during that era. Your buys, your tries on your Wikipedia. Stop. Listen. Your buys and tries on your Wikipedia. Were you playing in Orlando? Your buys and tries look like Tommy's now.
Yeah.
Really great vasodilation, really great like separation in the muscles. I do think about this a lot. And JJ's looking great.
This is why you're sending
anybody in the graphics department, pull it up. JJ's looking.
Voice notes.
Yeah, the hair was a little bit aggressive, but like the body. JJ had the body. You got a little bit softer like during those Dallas years, but like woo. LA looks JJ Redick, like oh man. Let's go.
Anyways, I was gonna say
yeah.
First of all, to that comment, during the lockout, I was like a maniac. I just was like, I'm gonna work. I was coming off an injury, surgery. I'm gonna just get back in shape. And so my wife was seeing this trainer, and he happened to be a bodybuilder. Like that was what he did prior to training people. He was a bodybuilder. So that for 5 months, however long the thing was, I lifted weights with him 4 days a week. I didn't gain any weight. I was still like 196-ish, but I was so ripped that year. I remember a lot of guys didn't think we were going to have a season. So there were a lot of guys that came back into camp really, really out of shape. And I remember going to the doctor for my physical. And he's like, all right, take your shirt off. And I took my shirt off. He's like, oh, I can tell you've been working out. And nice. I was like, that's a great compliment. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. No, but I was going to say.
It was just some doctor in a 24-hour fitness gym.
I was going to say, though, that there was so at some point, I don't know, 22, 23-ish, I was like, all right, and maybe I've been a dick since then. But at some point, I was like, if I leave my house, I'm just going to be nice to people.
Yeah.
Just try to be nice to people, And it's like, do you mind? No, I don't mind. Of course I don't mind. I don't mind. I don't mind at all. Was there ever a stage in your life where you didn't feel comfortable? You didn't enjoy the fan interactions? Did you ever have that sort of rebelliousness?
No,
to
man.
it?
I mean, first of all, I'm not like I'm not at that level of fame. There's people watching this like, who is this? So no, I'm not at that point. But my line for me, there was one time where I was like, yeah, this is my personal line. I'm not going to cross this. My wife was breastfeeding, and someone came up to us in a plane and was taking a photo, and I was like, hey man, like I'm holding up a sheet so she can breastfeed. And he's like, it's cool, bro. I'll cut her out. And I'm like, I don't know you. Like, nah, we're not doing this.
I don't want you to have a photo on your phone of my wife breastfeeding.
Yeah. Like, I'm sorry. Like, and he's like, but I love Homecoming King, but I don't love you loving my wife that much.